Well, we're kind of stepping back for a minute because blues came before jazz. And to talk about jazz, we need to acknowledge that it was the birth child of the blues. Starting in the 1910s, jazz spread all over the world, combining brass band, marches, quadrilles, begin, ragtime, and blues with the magic word improvisation. In the 30s came bebop, which caused a shift from danceable music toward a musician's music, played at faster tempos and more chord-based improvisation. Near the end of the 40s, a calmer, smoother sound emerged with long, melodic lines. By the 50s, hard bop, which was influenced by rhythm and blues, gospel, made its debut. Later, there came something called modal jazz, using the musical scale and free jazz rock fusion, mixing its stuff together, which used more electrified instruments. In the 21st century, Latin and Afro-Cuban jazz emerged. Now, New Orleans has been recognized as the birthplace of jazz in the South, but one of the best kept secrets is that there is an outstanding array of jazz musicians in and around Galveston, Texas. In her book, Island of Color, Isola Fetford Collins noted that many of the Louisiana artists would come over here, hone their skills, learn things, and then they would rush off to Houston to play with some big gigs, learning from our homies in Galveston. One early group included Clifford Duvall, Buddy Williams, Rip Bolden, William Smitty Smith, A.D. Adams, and L.B. Flugelhorn. And speaking of bands, they've already mentioned to you the Prairie View Co-ed, college co-eds that they were called. And they were formed because in the 40s, there were a lot of our men had to go off into military and were drafted. And it left the college with fewer male musicians. And so Isola Collins played trumpet in that orchestra. This group performed regularly at a place called the El Dorado Ballroom. Raise your hand if you ever heard that word, El Dorado. There you go. And that was in Houston. And later the co-eds toured such places as the Apollo Theater and the Savoy Ballroom on the East Coast. A roll call of famous jazz musicians would have to include King Curtis, Buster Pope, who was a trombonist who could imitate Louis Armstrong's voice to a T, so bad that people didn't know it wasn't Louis Armstrong. And he would carry his trombone in a sack to practices and gigs in two pieces. John Bubba Tarver, William Dick Dickerson, who played piano and organ, and Philip Buddy Williams. Also, there was a promoter named Charles Shiro, who brought many of the big bands to Galveston at the City Auditorium. Many will recall Fleming S. Huff, known by the students as Fess, and by his family as Snooks. As a band director and a teacher, he helped so many young musicians develop their skills and talents both in school and after school. Another wonderful artist was Omar Galloway, who played at the Tremont Hotel for over 20 years. He has multifaceted ways of playing, or they say, tickling the ivory. Another musician, Dr. Frederick Tillis, who you've already heard for his classical music, also was a great jazz musician. He actually composed a choral work that was about a very famous person known as Duke Ellington. And he did this on the East Coast. We have to include one of my favorites that I had the opportunity to be with, and that was Patrick Michael Williams, Sr. After attending 2 years at Texas College, Patrick returned to Galveston and joined the Bobby Scott Orchestra, which included musicians Doug McKinley on bass guitar, Malcolm Esther on valve trombone, Joe Louis Smith on guitar, and someone named Tooney on drums. Pat played with many famous jazz and R&B artists. He performed as a traveling musician for the Motown record company. Equally amazing was his teaching record, which included managing instructor with Arnett Cobb, you probably have heard of him, and the Summer Jazz Workshop in Houston, adjudicator at Texas Southern University's Jazz Festival, and a lecturer for Elder Hostel Continuing Education at the University of Texas. There are many other greats, and even my dad had a little combo that played in Dickinson, Texas in the 40s and 50s. His name was Edward S. Huff, cousin to Fleming S. Huff. There are many, many more that we could talk about, but the legacy of Galveston jazz is continuing, and it is still thriving through artists such as Lawrence B. Bone Thomas, who continues to teach and play, improvising pure jazz sound as well as sacred music. I feel honored to have Lawrence perform with me on his Flugelhorn, and he will begin with an example of a blues, which we recall is the mother of jazz. The song is entitled, I've Been Schooled, and it was written by my own mama about a person who broke her heart a long time before I came along. We will conclude with my own composition, a little jazz piece called Freedom. Okay. There's no joke about it, and you will have to learn that when you in love, your heart will really burn. I've been schooled. Yes, I've been schooled. But I don't hurt anymore. I can walk right out that door 'cause I've been schooled. But if I could catch him.